Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time around, we finished up Season 8 with the End of the Demons. What was that about?
Well, the giant satyr, the half-man, half-goat, was summoned up by the Master. What was his name? Azal.
Yeah.
And he apparently is some alien species who's been experimenting on planet Earth trying to help humans evolve, and apparently doesn't like the way it's going, so he tries to give the Doctor his power even though the Master wants it, and the Doctor says, I don't want that responsibility, so he says, well, I'll just blow the whole place up. But then they manage to get him back into his little demon cubbyhole, I guess.
Well, he was trying to kill the Doctor, and then, in the span of 5 seconds, Jo got in front to try to sacrifice herself.
That's right.
And it broke Azal's logic, so he exploded. All of this, again, happening in the span of about 15 seconds. Yeah. So, but that's how they won. And then at the end, they arrested the Master. And so, we're not sure where he's going to go within this next season here. Don't know if he's going to be quite the overarching villain that we had last season.
That was kind of interesting, though.
Yeah, definitely. Especially just seeing the different ridiculous plans he was coming up with. But now we are... Well, apparently we're still in 1971. Apparently this season started in December of 1971 before moving on into 1972. Okay. But we are starting up Season 9 of Doctor Who Classic. Oh. And because it is the first episode of the season, the full-length reaction is available for free. So if you want to go check that out, it's down in the description and in the pinned comment. And you can watch that, have a good time. And when you're done with that, pop back over here for the discussion. So yeah. And this is all... this is only 4 episodes long, so it'll all be contained in that one full length. So, and today, I mean, we both see the title that's on the monitor right now. Today is Day of the Daleks.
They're back.
They're back after 3 or 4 years. They're finally back. So, I'll be curious to see what they're going to be doing in this one. I was also told that apparently the original effects, which most likely we're going to be getting because that's generally what BritBox offers, apparently the original effects and voice in this episode sucked, so they redid it later. I think like even years later, they redid it. They actually CG'd over the Daleks, and then they got the modern voice actor to re-record all the lines. But I'm going to doubt that's the version we're going to get today. So we're going to get the sort of just barely coming out of retirement Daleks in this episode. So
I wonder if these are literally the same Dalek costume mechanism, whatever, as they were originally.
Maybe that's why they haven't aged well in 3 years. That could be it. I don't know. But yeah, this will be the third Doctor's first encounter with the Daleks, as well as the Brigadier.
Of course, the Daleks will recognize him, won't they? He will recognize them, obviously.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. They may not. Now, granted, they did recognize the second Doctor immediately after regeneration, so it's entirely possible. Yeah. So I guess we'll just have to see. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
Then let's just go ahead and jump right into Day of the Daleks. Here we go.
No! No! No!
What the Whoa. Up.
What are you doing here? Well, I'm not here, don't worry. Well, that is, in a sense, I am here, but you are not there. Yes, well, it's a bit difficult to explain, really. This won't do at all. We can't have two of us running about. Yes, well, don't worry.
I love how casual he is about it.
I'm a scientist, not a politician.
You know, Doctor, if you didn't spend so much time tinkering around with this wretched contraption, you'd realize just how bad the international situation's become.
Humans are always squabbling over something, Brigadier.
Yes, well, this particular squabble looks like ending up in a third world war. The Chinese delegation have refused to attend. Without them, the conference can't even begin. Now, Styles is flying to Peking in a few hours. There's just a chance that he can persuade them to change their minds.
All right, Brigadier.
Is this, like, carrying forward the whole thing with the Mind of Evil?
Could be.
They did lose their representative.
The old English countryside. Good effect.
Yeah.
What the heck?
What the?
It's a Klingon.
Meh, it really is.
Well, these would have actually come first because our Klingons that look like that didn't happen until the 80s.
Someone was in here.
Are you accusing me of lying, sir?
Sir Reginald, you've obviously been under considerable strain recently. Were you feeling at all unwell last night?
I felt and feel perfectly well. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a lot to do. I'm due at the airport in an hour.
You've no objection to my men searching the grounds?
None at all. Though I really don't know what you hope to find.
Ah, bureaucrats.
It's like the boy who cried wolf and then said, "What wolf?"
Now, the weapon he's got is obviously futuristic.
Yeah. Maybe? Perhaps they could be the Thals and the Khaleds? Well, okay, that's new effects right there. I think this is Skaro. You know, because they talked about World War III. Maybe it's sort of like weirdly happening at the same time from Skaro.
Yeah.
Which is what led to the creation of the Daleks. Nope, there they are.
The thing is complete. You know, one thing you can be certain of with politicians is that whatever their political ideas, they always keep a well-stocked larder. Not to mention the cellar.
And not to mention a duck.
I told you not to mention a duck.
Well, you heard what Miss Patchett
Exactly.
said. We were to treat...
Well, it's nice that that gun has two sights.
They're nacelles.
Eh.
For firing warp speed bullets, no doubt. By the way, the little time transporter looks a little bit like a tricorder.
Yeah. Good job.
All enemies of the Daleks must be destroyed! Exterminate them! Exterminate them! Exterminate them! Exterminate them!
Well, those look like new Daleks.
Yeah.
Polished up at least.
Yeah. Which is interesting. Maybe I could check and see what the person actually said was different, but I mean, this is definitely an updated version. So I'll just take a second to load up Twitter on here.
Now, while you're doing that, I don't recall anything in the late 70s, or in the late 60s or early 70s, that would have basically led to a story about a Third World War. That was all late 50s and early 60s. Once the Soviets developed their own thermonuclear weapons, we had the whole Cuban Missile Crisis. But by the time this would have aired in, did you say it was 71? December 71?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, although we were still in the thick of Vietnam, I do not recall any major conflict between the Russians and the Chinese. I realize this is set 10 years in the future, so they're obviously just going off of a potential Third World War rather than anything that was actually happening at the time.
Yeah. Well, and there's also the fact that it honestly seems to be building off of the Mind of Evil, because didn't they lose the Chinese delegate in that one, or no? I think they were still alive.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it sounds like it could be sort of building off of that. So okay, so they did the DVD of this episode in 2011, and they decided that the effects and the Dalek voices didn't hold up. So they made a sort of George Lucas special edition of it. New CG effects. The Daleks were redubbed by the modern voice actor Nick Briggs. and new shots recorded on period-correct cameras to add to the episodes, to the final episode. Okay. So, I think then that those Daleks that we saw there, I think those are the legitimate costumes or suits from 1970.
What do we call those?
I don't know. the
Mechanisms.
the legitimate boxes that they were sitting in from 1971. But everything else has been sort of touched up.
Yeah.
I will say though, I'm curious what the original effects were for like the the glowy stuff and all that, because it does feel a little out of place. Like every so often I look at it, it's like, oh, we're back in the old Reconstruction days, where they've got weird CG and stuff. But other than that, it does seem pretty good. Yeah. And I would also be curious about the original voices for the Daleks. Yeah. So, but I mean, Nicholas Briggs, I mean, he's been doing the Dalek voices since 2005. So he's kind of mastered it by especially even 2011. So it's interesting hearing a modern Dalek voice on this older episode. It's also interesting just the fact that it does seem to be the Thals and the Khaleds from Skaro, but there are also Daleks there, which is interesting. So it must be sort of like that, and it's sort of paralleling Earth with Skaro with this whole World War III situation. Also, to add to the confusion of when all this unit stuff takes place, in the last episode they were talking about BBC 3, which apparently was not established until like 2001. So they just made up BBC 3 for that episode. So that adds to it. It's like, well, people were thinking, well, it's in the 80s or something like that. And then it's like, well, it wasn't established until 2001. So do we have to take that into account? So, yeah. I feel like, no, that's not part of it at all. So you have to... I honestly feel like it's just 1971. Like, I don't know why we have to, like, go back and forth with, like, the 80s and stuff like that. Just say it's the 70s. It's completely fine. Yeah. So...
I really kind of also like the Bill and Ted moment where the Doctor and Joe appear in the doorway and makes you wonder, will there be a scene later on in one of the next 3 episodes where they come in and find themselves staring at the console and going, oh yeah, we did that.
Yeah, so I would imagine so. Yeah.
And he did say something about time, but it wasn't, wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Yeah, I don't think they start saying that until at least the 4th Doctor. So, and even then, I'm not sure if he says that. So, but yeah, it doesn't sound like something Pertwee would say. But alrighty. Actually, okay. I'm sure you're not hot in here.
No,
I'm a little warm. So,
back into the freezer.
Which is weird because I've been getting colder recently. The other night, on Thanksgiving night, I was so cold I put on a 4th blanket.
Yikes.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's like I'm turning into you and I'm not turning into you at the same time.
That's terribly frightening in so many ways.
Well, yeah. Oh, actually, I just noticed on here, this is called Day of the Daleks. This was all aired on the same day, apparently. All 4 episodes aired December 31st, 1971. Well, I want to know the story behind that now.
It was just a New Year's Eve special.
I guess. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, because it's interesting that, in modern Doctor Who, they do that. They've pretty much, for 10 years or so, maybe even longer, they consistently put out a Christmas special every year. Even if they didn't have a season that year, they still put out a Christmas special. Nowadays, it's switched over to being a New Year's special, which nobody likes. But yeah, it's always interesting to see the sort of holiday specials of the classic era, although they haven't said anything about it being New Year's Day in this story. So, but then we also had again, another Dalek episode, the Christmas episode that was thrown in the middle of the Daleks' master plan.
Yeah. Oh. Now, in December of 1971, that was the middle of my sophomore year in college, and I would have gone back to Austin, Texas because my folks had just bought a new house. Of course, you don't remember that house at all because you were 2 years old, I think, when we sold it off after my parents died. But yeah, that would have been the first time I'd ever spent Christmas at that house. Very weird.
That was a weird transition, actually.
Well, come on, Joe. What about trying some of that escapology of yours?
I've been trying, but ropes are too tight.
I tell you what. Ever tried untying mine? Got him?
Is this the one thing Joe is trained in?
The function of the human is to obey. Activates the magnetron.
Maybe they're not the Khaleds. Again, I want to know what the original effects were, because that doesn't look amazing. But it looks about as good as the special editions do. Ooh. These new effects make this all the much gorier.
Drop it!
Oops.
Oh, no.
They're a form of higher anthropoid. They used to live in scattered communities on one of the outer planets. They make very useful servants.
So they are very much the
do?
planet
But
of
we
the
use
apes.
them as...
Well, he had to get his cape.
How do you know?
Ooh! Oh, good shot, Doc.
I would say vaporizing, but they're not vaporizing. They're exploding in giant balls of goo.
Well. Alrighty. And that's part 2.
Remember in the first couple of seasons where they really didn't show a whole lot of violence?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Now they're just exploding people left and right. I mean, that's like at least half a dozen people who have been obliterated just in these 2 episodes.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very strange to see the Doctor with a gun, you know?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess, you know, it's a hostile force and stuff like that, but I mean, does he even know what these are? They just show up and he's immediately killing them, so... I will say, this definitely feels like a Dalek episode in that it's alright. It's okay. I feel like we've been spoiled on the past season of having the Master, and at this point, kind of missing him a bit, so...
Well, here's the thing, though. We still don't know what the Dalek connection is here.
Yeah.
We've got these 22nd century people who have the Ogrons with them, and they have the guerrilla group that, for some reason, is trying to assassinate Sir Reginald. Again, we still don't know why. We know that somehow eliminating Sir Reginald would change the course of history for the better, according to them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, seriously, we've got an hour's worth of story here, and we still don't know exactly where it's going yet. So,
Yeah.
in that respect, I'm kind of fascinated by it because I'm trying to figure out where do all these parts fit together.
Maybe because they're from the future, if it's not Skaro, then it must be Earth, and they've said they are humans. So maybe it's that... Because they mentioned that Sir Reginald did convince the Chinese to go to the conference. So maybe either... I guess it's either World War happens or it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And based on that, somewhere the Daleks come in. Maybe it's that World War III does happen. Everything, you know, goes to hell, and in that, the Daleks come in and take over. And then the guerrillas, maybe they're trying to stop... They're trying to kill Sir Reginald so that there won't be a Third World War.
Did we ever establish in Dalek Invasion of Earth, didn't they come in after the war, or was that ever mentioned? Because that may be what this is.
Oh, that's
That
right.
if Sir Reginald prevents the war, then the Daleks won't be able to come in to invade the Earth in, what was it, 2165 AD?
Yeah. It was something...
Which would be 22nd century.
Yeah, it was somewhere around there. So yeah, maybe this is a sort of backwards prequel to it. Which I mean, technically they will do that later because Genesis of the Daleks is technically a prequel to the original Dalek serial, but it has a later version of the Doctor. So that could be it. Is that this is sort of lead into that maybe.
And if that were true, what would be really cool if somewhere, when Jo is there in the future, she meets a young woman who turns out to be Susan.
Yeah, that would be interesting. So, and this is year 9, just about, of Doctor Who. So, I mean, doing a callback like that would be really cool. So, I don't know.
Exterminate!
It's interesting that you can hear the slight sting from the end of the last episode at the beginning of these episodes, which is strange that they didn't edit that out.
So another way of traveling through time without having to use the TARDIS, or not controlling the TARDIS.
She called him the Doctor.
Doctor! Did you say Doctor?
He appears to have got through to our time. He was seen by the guards.
The Doctor is an enemy of the Daleks. He must be found at once and exterminated.
Well, they do know of him.
Is that why there's a guard on the door?
Exactly.
A discount ice
He
warrior?
is there simply for your protection. And make sure that the Doctor is taken immediately to the guest room at Regional Control.
Frankly, I don't know whether I can stand much more of your hospitality.
A very great friend of yours is waiting for you.
A very weird science fiction film from the mid-70s,
What's going
where
on?
the guy pronounces hospitality almost like it's horse brutality.
Some more wine, Doctor.
No, thank you. No, not for me.
What on
I
earth?
must admit, it's an excellent vintage.
22nd century bong.
Nuh.
We had dinner at old Styles' house. Do you remember, Joe?
Seems a long time ago.
And if you're putting wine in your bong, I think you're doing something wrong.
And quite frankly, I wish I was back there
Not
now.
that we would know.
Naturally, you
Meh.
would prefer the 20. I can assure you that this planet has never been more efficiently, more economically run. People have never been happier or more prosperous.
Then why do you need so many people to keep them under control? Don't they like being happy and prosperous?
You're being a bit unreasonable, Doctor.
Am I now?
Well, those creatures aren't really savage.
Exactly. They are simply guard dogs. They just do what I tell them.
You mean there aren't enough humans around that will follow your orders so blindly?
That is not what I was saying.
Isn't it? Then what you're saying is that the entire human population of this planet, apart from a few remarkable exceptions like yourself, really only fit to lead the life of a dog.
You shouldn't have spoken to him like that. You don't know the whole picture.
Joe, you're a little too trusting.
Neither do you.
The appearance of the Doctor has changed before.
And how will you find out?
We will use the mind analysis machine.
Right. Now, do you understand the
Maybe
sound?
we'll get flashbacks to the previous Dalek stories. Oh, thank God this thing is here.
It's a tricycle.
Yeah, whatever this is. Let's get out of here.
You are the Doctor. You are an enemy of the Daleks. Now you are in our power. You will be exterminated.
I didn't even think about the fact that the 2011 version could put in Hartnell and Troughton's, their faces.
Yeah.
Does make me wonder, though, what the original effect was. See, that's the thing. I almost feel like I would prefer watching the original to this. So, is that weird? Are we weird for saying that?
No, because, it's like after you've watched the upgraded version of the Star Wars trilogy, then you can go back and see the original and see all the things that they've done to it.
Yeah. I think part of it, too, and this is also with the special editions, is that they're not quite blended properly. Like, when they cut to that, establishing shot of the CG city and stuff, it's like, I don't think John Pertwee's looking at that,
Yeah.
No, he's probably not looking at anything. He's just looking at whatever was away from the camera. But if it was like a model or something, it would look better, And I know they said that, I guess in the next episode, there's going to be a couple shots that they refilmed with, like, accurate 1970s cameras. But I'm curious why they didn't just do that, Like, especially for that city shot. If you build a model and then film that, So... This definitely feels like, though, a prequel to the Dalek invasion of Earth. So I'm curious if there's going to be any tie to that. But yeah, I also do like that. Yeah, the Daleks don't immediately recognize the Third Doctor. Yeah. So
again, for a serial called The Day of the Daleks, they really haven't been in it all that much.
Yeah. The only thing I can think is because this was all aired in the same day that they went with that.
Let me interrogate him.
Why should you be more successful?
Because I understand human psychology.
I like how offended that Dalek sounded.
His confidence, to put pressure on him through the girl. By the time I have finished with him, I shall be able to crush the guerrilla organization entirely.
They don't have a name?
I guess not.
Like the Resistance or anything?
Yeah. The Rebel Alliance.
The Daleks have discovered the secret of time travel. We have invaded Earth again. We have changed the pattern of history.
Again. It's interesting that they mention that they've just recently invented time travel. It's like, yes, just recently. We totally haven't seen you 8 other times.
You are a traitor. You're a quisling. Silence! You do not understand.
Do you get the Quisling reference?
No.
Okay, write that down.
Okay. Oh! Now that was a genuine explosion.
No harm has come to these two. Too much depends on them.
As for you, my friend...
Put that gun down. There's no point in murdering him. They would always have found someone. Now just leave him.
Right. Let's go.
Back in the 20th century.
Every time we go to the future, I forget about UNIT.
You went back into our time to kill Styles before he could carry out his plan.
Right. We've been fighting the Daleks for years, but it was hopeless. Eventually we must lose, so we thought, what else can we do?
We learned through one of our
Plot of the
spies
Terminator.
that the Daleks had succeeded in
Years
creating
before
a
the
time
Terminator.
Yeah, actually.
a copy of the plan.
Somehow the Daleks found what we were doing, and they sent Ogrons back into your time after us and attacked one of our men.
Well, that
And
must have been
the
announced
Ogrons
about
are the
now,
T-800s.
Or you can succeed where we've failed, Doctor. We want you to go back into your own time and kill Styles.
Okay, slight problem. Maybe have him arrested.
All of those unit soldiers and nobody's seeing him?
Nope.
He's running like John Belushi in Animal House.
Nah.
Styles didn't cause that explosion, somebody else did.
Well, obviously, but who...
Sure. Isn't that exactly what he would have done? One last suicidal attempt to carry out his orders?
It's possible, I suppose.
You're trapped in a temporal paradox. Styles didn't cause that explosion and start the wars. You did it yourselves.
Well, that's just wholly unfortunate.
You spoke of the war. Its years of suffering and starvation. Well, I can prevent all that happening, you know.
You saved my life. You could have let them kill me. Go. Quick.
You are a traitor to the Daleks! You must be exterminated!
Who knows? I may have helped to exterminate you.
Ooh.
The peaceful atmosphere of this Georgian house gives little indication of the underlying tension.
I wish every time they had a reporter, it was the same guy.
To stem.
Keep them back as long as you can.
This house is under attack by a hostile force. You will please consider yourself under my orders. Now be quiet, sir! Captain Yates! Get Sir Reginald and all the delegates away from this area at once. Use the front exit.
So I guess if they defuse the bomb, they should all disappear, because otherwise, how do you get rid of all those Daleks?
I have a theory. They're going to lure them all into the house and let it blow up.
Oh, maybe not.
Tell your men to fall back. Let the Daleks into the house.
Doctor, you sure
It
that...
may not make military sense, but it's the only way.
All right. Brigadier to all units. Let them pass. I say again, let them pass. Regroup on the main road. Out.
I mean, I think it does make some military sense.
This time it's going to be different.
What happened?
Your conference has been saved, Sir Reginald. Now it's up to you and your friends to make sure it's a success. You still have a choice.
Don't worry. We all know what will happen if we fail.
So do we. We've seen it happen, haven't we, Joe?
Yep, and that's it.
Now, once again, realize that all of the exposition there at the beginning of the 4th episode had to be done.
Yeah.
But it really kind of slowed things down, but then picked up there with that big battle there at the end.
Well.
There we go.
Alright.
Daleks originated by Terry Nation.
You know, it's interesting because we used to have where that would appear in the opening titles, so I'm curious if maybe that's them trying to not credit Terry Nation as much as possible. I don't know.
Well, obviously they would have had to either deal with him or with his estate or with his agent for use of them.
Which, I mean, I think they still do that to this day,
Yeah.
so... and I don't know if this is still a thing in modern Doctor Who, but I remember people telling me that in order to keep the license for the Daleks, they had to at least have a cameo by the Daleks every season of modern Doctor Who. So, and actually when they made the Ninth Doctor episode that we watched, they wrote the entire episode before getting the license. And so they had to think like, okay, well, if we can't get the Daleks, we're going to have to rewrite this to be a different, species that the Time Lords fought in the Time War and everything. But then it all worked out. So, well, that was a Dalek episode.
Well, it was an episode that almost had the Daleks in it.
Yeah, I mean, for the Daleks' grand return, that was all right.
But no, a good story though. And again, the Daleks are almost incidental to the story, because what has happened again, we've got this future, this dystopian future where the Daleks once again have come in trying to take over Earth, taking all the minerals and the resources to expand their empire. But it's really more about the controller and his people and the guerrillas who are trying to prevent this without realizing that they've accidentally started it. So, again, as far as a time travel story, that's a very good twist there at the end, where they realize, wait a minute, did you leave anybody behind? Yeah, we left this one guy. What would he do? He would blow up the place, try to kill Styles. But it wasn't Styles, it was the Daleks. So anyway, a nice little twist, tied up very neatly. And the guy who was the writer, again, we hadn't...
it was like Lewis something, wasn't it? Let's see.
Lewis Marks.
Yeah.
All right, again, I don't think we've seen him before. If we have, we don't remember it. But again, talk about continuity. He knows, obviously, he knows the story of the Daleks well enough to, again, include them in this story, but not make them the focus of the story.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, it doesn't really, contradict anything. And I mean, trying to figure out the Dalek timeline through these episodes is next to impossible, but it sounds like at that point they had just started to figure out time travel, which I think, when was the first time we saw that? Maybe, I guess it was The Chase.
The Chase, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that, I think, was more in the future. So, this was the first instance of them learning time travel, but this technically, I guess, still isn't to the point of the original serial. I don't know, but so there's that, but also tying it in sort of to half tying it in, I guess, to the Dalek invasion of Earth. I guess you could almost say that this is just a different timeline of that, basically. So maybe now, where you had the paradox of looping back and the Daleks taking over. Now, that timeline has never happened, so then there's a new timeline which eventually leads to the Dalek invasion of Earth.
That would make sense.
Yeah, so maybe the two stories technically don't connect, but yeah, honestly, it's pretty decent, not contradicting all the others.
Yeah.
So, and even they don't even really mention the whole thing of oh well, Skaro exploded and all the Daleks died, and it's well, that was in the future, so that was a different point. We don't know when. It was just a different point. So, alrighty. Well, we had the new peace conference after the last one didn't quite work out due to the Master. So it would be hilarious. Although I don't think we're gonna get the Cybermen in the Third Doctor's era at any point. It would be hilarious if they did another peace conference and the Cybermen interrupted it. So we just gotta get all of them. So, although this seems to be working out a bit more than the last peace conference they did, or at the very least, maybe the first peace conference was world peace and stuff like that, and it's well, let's just try not to blow each other up at the moment. So, but we had Sir Reginald, a very typical politician. So,
and again, my only real quibble with that, and we've seen this again with managers and controllers and things like that. I understand that politicians have an ego, but a guy like that, who literally disregards practically everything, has to be removed at the end, because the brigadier says, "Sir, you are now under my orders because this is an emergency situation." I'm sorry, but any politician worth his salt would know if there's a chance that someone's going to attack the peace conference, you get the delegates out first. That's what get yourself and the delegates out and stop all this nonsense.
Yeah.
So I mean that's a not just a science fiction but a regular fiction kind of thing. But it does get kind of grating after a while.
Yeah. So, and then even at the beginning, I guess at the beginning it kind of makes sense because, but I mean he gives this call about ghosts and stuff like that, and the next day when the people who I guess would deal with that unit or someone comes to investigate what he was saying, it's oh no, I didn't mean that, get out of here and stuff like that, and it's well, but you already said, but I guess it was his assistant or whoever that called unit. So let's see, but yeah, time ghosts. Also, you were wrong that the Doctor and Joe never went back and saw themselves at the TARDIS console.
Yeah, that's kind of sad that they didn't do that, because that would have been a nice little tag at the end there.
Yeah, so, but yeah, the time ghosts, which were just people phasing in and out of the 20th century, which was interesting, with different attempts to try to kill Sir Reginald.
Now, there's this is probably not intentional at all by Mr. Marks, but in either 67, 68, or 68, 69, there was an American TV show, I think it was on ABC, called The Time Tunnel. And it was about two guys who could go back in time and forward. I can't remember if they went forward in time, but they always went backwards in time through a specific kind of quantum thing like Ant-Man does. But this is very long tunnel, and when they go through it, they go back in time. And the fact that you've got this tunnel in the 20th century that still exists in the 22nd century, and that's why they're able to do that so easily. Again, that's very, very reminiscent of that thing. And the Time Tunnel, by the way, was based on a novel called The Time Tunnel. And it was, again, something that had existed, for hundreds of years. I believe it was in Mexico City. But they realized that because this was the one constant point over 4 centuries, they would be able to go back in time during that period if they could simply focus on that particular tunnel so they could get back and forth. So
yeah,
I know that sounds confusing, but yeah, it's just 60 years ago.
Oh, so it's time travel.
Yes.
So, and yeah, you bring up Ant-Man time travel. I mean, that was the most hilarious thing in Avengers Endgame. Spoilers, I guess, if you haven't seen it, but when they try to talk about time travel and how time travel doesn't work in movies, and they made it 10 times more confusing, like, just go with the basic time travel. It doesn't matter, you know? So, I mean, even here, when you're trying to decipher Doctor Who time travel, it's even crazier because it's always new time that's happening. It's like, time has always happened and never happened at the same time, you know? So, and even here with the two, like, split timelines that we had to come up with to explain the Dalek invasion of Earth. So, let's see. We had the one thing that Joe is trained in, which is escapology. It's the only thing she knows how to do, which people have corrected us that she never received any unit training because she's not a soldier. And I guess the thing was, when they introduced her, is that she's related to someone important, and so that's how she got the job, and the Brigadier, instead of making her a soldier, just sort of pawned her off to the Doctor instead.
All right.
At which point she is still not very useful. So, but yeah, I guess that's the one thing she has is escapology. For some reason. I don't know why, but I mean, and Joe in this one, I don't know, I don't want to say is like a little too trusting of the controller or anything, but I mean, I don't know, when you show up to this place and here's this dude dressed in all black and stuff like that, it's like you take a little bit of it with a couple grains of salt, you know?
But I mean, that's part of her character, just like, you know, Jamie and Susan and some of the others.
Yeah.
That because they are not aware of the history, she never heard of the Daleks before this.
Yeah.
That, you know, she has no reason to distrust him.
Yeah, that's true. So, let's see. We had the Ogrons, which they were also just kind of there as just sort of the security. I do kind of like that they just are. They just sort of exist. Like, oh, there's just this alien species that the Daleks like. So,
but it also sets you up that they might possibly return in some kind of adventure on their own planet.
Yeah, possibly.
But again, also the look of the faces and the uniforms and everything, that's very much Planet of the Apes from 1968-69.
Yeah. Well, it's also very interesting. I feel like they've done that before too, where the Daleks just sort of have this other species there. I can't remember which one. It's been a long time since we've watched any Dalek serial, let alone one of the, I guess, bigger ones. Yeah, I guess most of them were in the first Doctor's era, weren't they?
Yeah.
Because the second Doctor only had 2 of them, and then 3 seasons later we get this. So, yeah, but I'm trying to think. I think in the Dalek invasion of Earth, there was some sort of weird creature. I want to say like the Slither or something. Like, wasn't that a thing? It was just some weird creature, and then I think maybe Ian killed it or something. I don't know. It's been such a long time since those old episodes. So, let's see. Well, we had the gorillas, which were interesting. It is interesting they don't have a name. They're just the gorillas. So, but them resisting the Daleks and then accidentally causing this whole thing is very interesting. Now, it does present the question of, well, how did this start? You know, how does this paradox start but then I guess that's the whole laws of time travel and everything. Yeah. So what started this sort of paradox? Because why would they have gone back in time in the first place and set off that bomb? Unless the answer is the first time this happens, it's the Daleks that do it, maybe? I don't know.
No, again, all the thing holds up because since in the story that the Doctor and Joe are told, all of the delegates, including Sir Reginald, die in the explosion. Yeah. Everybody simply assumed that Sir Reginald was the one who was the traitor and who had set it up, and that mistimed it and it blew up and killed him too. So, but that obscured what really happened, which was that Shura was down in the basement, and he's the one who blew it up.
Yeah. Well, but what I'm saying is, why did he go back in time in the first place? Because presumably, time played out if Sir Reginald didn't do it, time played out where the peace conference worked. You get all the way to the 22nd century, but there's no war, there are no Daleks there. So why would they have then gone back in time and accidentally caused that history?
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes. And then there's the other part of, so this paradox has just been going on.
Yeah.
But at what point does the Doctor show up? And now, because he breaks the paradox here. So how does that happen?
You're asking too many questions.
Yeah, it's a little too complicated. It's starting to turn into the Flash when they start doing their time travel stuff. So, what I can only assume, aside from just not trying to answer that question, is if the timelines already exist, that just is that timeline coming back, even if it wasn't supposed to exist and making itself exist, which makes less sense. But that's okay. Let's see here. They kept talking about production. At first I thought they were making more Daleks, but it seemed to just be kind of the same thing that they were doing in the Dalek invasion of Earth. They were just mining out all the Earth.
Yeah.
So
just getting enough raw materials to make more Daleks back on Skaro.
Yeah. So and spreading the Dalek Empire. So which makes more sense than in the Dalek invasion of Earth, where it's like they were going to mine the core of the Earth and then turn the Earth into a spaceship and then use that to fly around the universe. This was probably better. So
yeah.
Let's see. I did like the controller. I thought he was a very good character. So,
and again, probably not patterned after the Master or the War Chief, but very similar, not only in manner but also looks.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, this whole thing of, you think he's just some guy working for the Daleks, but then I like the extra thing, with the backstory of, well, his family became controllers to try to help humans, to try to make it as good as they could, despite the fact that they couldn't defeat the Daleks. So that was interesting. We did have the Daleks recognizing the Doctor and seeing that display with the previous two, which was pretty cool. But yeah, it's interesting. Again, I want to see what the original effect was. Yeah. Did they include the original two Doctors there? So
I would assume they would.
I would assume so too. And is this the first time they've referenced, since the regeneration, the Doctor changing appearance and everything?
I think so.
Yeah, because I guess the Daleks are the only ones who would know about that.
Yeah.
So, and the Master never brought it up. So,
I thought he said once something about you do look different from when I first knew you.
Maybe it might have been like in the first one, in the first episode. So, but I don't remember. All right, you had me write down Quisling.
All right. This is something that every British school child and certainly every adult would have known about. In World War II, when the Nazis went up into Scandinavia, and I can't remember which country it was, Norway, Sweden, one of these, there was a huge resistance there as well. But there was a man, and again, forgive me if I get his first name wrong, I think his name was Otto Quisling. And what happened was he was with the resistance, but as the Nazis invaded, he turned against his own people and sold out the resistance to the Nazis, who were able then to come in and completely wipe out the resistance, or at least shut it down. And from that point on, to be a traitor to your own people, you were known as a Quisling. And again, that would have been taught in all the history books. Everybody, and that would be literally the worst thing you could call somebody. If you're a Quisling, it means you literally collaborated with the Nazis to help wipe out your own people.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have that in America, but I guess the closest would just be calling someone a commie or something back in the day, So, okay, that's interesting. So, an interesting reference. And then when the Doctor says a whole family of Quislings, let's see. Well, we had again, Shura and the paradox set in. And again, I just can't think of how the paradox works, because I start to think about it, and it's like, there's too many questions that I can't find a proper answer for it. But then at the end, the idea of just luring all the Daleks in and then detonating that worked a lot better.
And again, kudos to the special effects people, even probably in the original, because they had obviously a shot of the exterior of the house, and then they matted over the top being blown off and the smoke coming out of it and everything.
Yeah.
So the special effects are definitely improving as every season goes by.
Yeah, so... And I mean, just, when we originally thought, like, oh, well, they put the Doctor on Earth so that, they could sort of cut down on some of the more expensive things. Honestly, the last few episodes where we're getting, more elaborate sets and stuff like that, and especially these... futuristic ones where even something simple in Colony in Space, it was a pretty decent set, all things considered, and we are getting some more of that here too.
Yeah.
And obviously I feel like they did spend a little cash to make new Dalek suits, so and honestly they looked perfectly fine in color too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is definitely getting better. It was a little strange, specifically on this version with some of the CG and stuff. Especially, I mean, even just down to the lasers, because they did change the effects on the lasers. There was just something about it. It's like, I don't know why, because obviously when they do a laser in the 70s, it's not going to look like the most, realistic, like, oh, they're actually firing these lasers or anything. But for some reason, it still looks right. And then when you add in the new lasers and they add sort of new lighting effects too, it does sort of take me out of it just a little bit. So
that didn't bother me at all.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't terrible. And it was mostly like, when they cut to the CG city, that's when I noticed it the most.
Now, I will say, the Daleks coming out of the tunnel and across the uneven terrain and then in the yard there at the house, that's the first time we've seen them where they weren't either inside somewhere or on a flat surface.
Yeah, so
it's obvious that the Daleks are now being able to move over uneven terrain on things that are not paved over and things like that. So
yeah, because it's been a while. For the most part, they have stayed to more controlled sets and stuff like that. Although I kind of remember older episodes where they were sort of doing that. I mean, Dalek Invasion of Earth also had that one Dalek that came out of the water. So
yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to see them. It's always funny to see them just in different environments, like when they were just sort of, going around like Trafalgar Square and stuff like that. Like that was always funny.
Yeah.
I guess that's pretty much it. You got anything else?
I got nothing at this point.
Yeah.
What's up next?
Next up is The Curse of Peladon.
Oh, really?
Yep. So we are going to be rewatching The Curse of Peladon next week, which means we're also going to be watching a modern Doctor Who episode, which we've mentioned about 10 times, but we'll go ahead and mention it again.
Oh boy.
That next week we'll be watching a 13th Doctor episode, and it'll be Season 11, Episode 6, Demons of the Punjab. So that'll be a very interesting. It's a specifically historical episode, which I knew pretty much immediately. I was like, okay, it's got to be a historical episode for the 13th Doctor, because those are honestly her best episodes. So,
well, I've always said the historicals were the best of all the Doctor Who's.
Yeah. So, but it is very interesting, just the fact that, like, it's not only that, those are her best episodes, but they're kind of better than any other historical episodes in modern Doctor Who. At least from my point of view. I'm sure there will be angry comments disagreeing with me. But yeah, so we'll be watching that next week. We'll be doing a double upload. First Curse of Peladon, then about an hour later, Demons will go up. So yeah, I guess that's basically it. You got anything else?
Nope, I'm done.
I just realized I've asked you that twice now.
Yes.
So yeah, that is basically it. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around to any of those. There's a playlist for all of our Doctor Who classic reactions, as well as another playlist to some other Doctor Who playlist I decided to put up. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.